What's up, guys? Eric Coates here. And, today we're going to talk about the lies people are fed when it comes to switching from their career in whatever they're doing and trying to break into the coding world, no matter what it is, whether it's web development, software development, you name it. I was inspired by this last night. I was scrolling through Facebook. Yes, you know as well as I do, we all still have one and we all still look at Facebook. We're all still scrolling, even though it's not cool anymore. But I came across a reel, and on that reel, it was kind of like a sarcastic Facebook ad. It was a Facebook reel ad. It was sarcastic, and it was like a person like, "Oh, I'm so sorry. I switched to a job that, I only have to work 35 hours a week from home and blah, blah, blah." All the, basically sarcastic that the job is so awesome. And it kind of made me angry because I'm sitting there and I'm thinking, none of what this is slinging right now is true. It says something like, get a job in 12 weeks at $100,000 or whatever the hell it was trying to feed you so that you click on it and sign up for this course that's probably horrible. But I think there's a lot of things that people get in their mind when they make a switch and they're trying to switch into software development or web development. And I was there too. So for a little background on me, for those of you who don't know, if you do, you've already heard this before, but I spent 17 years as management in hospitality industry. And it was a lot of hours. I was working like 65 hours a week, and I had kids. I had 4 kids, and at the time I had 3, and I was barely seeing them. And when I did see them, I was working shifts that were 14, 15 hours, and I was too tired to be a dad, because I would just lay there and I'd be able to read them a book or something like that, and we'd just kind of, snuggle with my kids on the couch because that's all I could really do because I was so tired. Because it was a physical job as well, running around, lifting things all day, 65 hours a week, it's a lot. And so in that, I also learned, because the job called for it, how to program. What I used to do is I was a social director, meaning when I was a corporate social director. So when corporate groups went on retreats for meetings, I was involved and planned like their stay. So all the stuff that they did in regards to activities, I planned it, whether it was a big, like a color wars thing or whatever it might be. So that's the job that I did. And basically, I spent 17 years doing that, and I eventually learned how to teach myself how to code because they wanted to customize games, right? So let's say me and my corporate group want to go away, and during an awards dinner we want to do like a trivia game about each other, right? So I taught myself HTML, CSS, and some JavaScript, and that's how I kind of started this journey. And within a few years of doing that, I left. I became a software developer in VBA, which is Visual Basic for Applications. Basically, you write code within the confines of the Microsoft Word, Microsoft Office suite, right? Most of what we did was Microsoft Access, the database program. And I left that after about like a year and a half, and I finally got a job in web development like I wanted to. So I can speak firsthand of the stuff that the bullshit that you're sold, and then the truth of it. And this isn't for somebody looking for like I gotta have all my feel goods feeling good, right? Like, it's honest. That's probably, I'll probably call the title of the video is, an honest take on switching careers into the software industry. So that's my background, and so I can tell you exactly what you're sold, exactly what you're gonna get, what you're not gonna get, what you're sold, and kind of the process through. So let's start with the self-taught route, because that's originally what I was, right? I was self-taught, and it's doable for sure. but it's hard. It is hard to teach yourself. And the biggest reason is there's so much to learn in software and web development, right? You'll notice that I say software and web development because they are two different things, right? Like, because if you learn a language like PHP, completely useless if you want to make a desktop application. Completely useless. I know that they're trying to make like a PHP native, but I mean, in pretty much for a desktop application, it's worthless. But if you want to be a web developer, 75% of websites are coded with PHP. All right, so that would be a good language to learn if you want to be a web developer. But, you know, if you want to make apps, you want to learn like Java and Kotlin. C# is also good because C# is kind of a little bit of everything. But when you first try to be the self-taught developer, you start Googling things, right? You might end up on a Reddit stream, which is a toxic place to be. Don't get me wrong, I love Reddit, but when you're vulnerable and trying to learn, it's not the place to go, okay? There are many other places to go aside from like Reddit, because you're just going to get a lot of negativity and stuff, and you know, people's strong opinions, and they're not always right, because you know, you only have so much. It's like the same reason like you want to call somebody and talk to them instead of text them, because you don't know how the words are going to hit. You're not going to know if they're going to know the context of what you're talking about, right? Reddit's kind of like that for things like career switches. That's not to say not going to get advice, but you know, you got to be careful. Take it with a grain of salt. So if you're going to be a self-taught developer, or you want to try that, which is where I started teaching myself from books. So I'll link it in the description, but it's HTML and CSS. It's the quick start guide. That was where I started with HTML. So I think I started a couple things online and kind of got the idea of it. And then I switched to that book and learned it all probably throughout the course of like, I don't know, maybe a week or so. And week, 2 weeks. And I felt pretty comfortable with it, right? Yeah, there was a lot of things in CSS that I quite didn't know yet. You know, couldn't understand like why use a float instead of, you know, something else, you know, Flexbox, you know, how to center things, you know, the difference between something like Margin-Auto and, you know, Flexbox, just like Content Center, right? Like, so I didn't know all that stuff, but I knew enough that I could make something look good. Now, can't say that, you know, I was 100% on media queries and how to, you know, make things mobile friendly and all that different stuff. So, but anyways, that's where I started. And the reason I did that was I wanted to be able to make the games that we were talking about that could be larger in size. To this point, everything was in PowerPoint. I even made real fortune in PowerPoint. But the problem was you have video content and there's a lot going on, and if you clicked in the wrong spot, it wasn't good. So I made the switch to HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. Now, most of the JavaScript I was writing at the time was just Googled because I didn't know what I was doing. I had no idea how to program because I understood HTML, CSS. And there's a debate that goes on that, you know, HTML and CSS, are they a code language? Are they not? I would say that they're not, because they're different in the way that you need to be able to use them as. Like, HTML, CSS is declarative, right? Like for HTML, you know, you want a header, you know, you got to use H1, right? Like, you know, that's the main thing on the page, or H2, or then that's a little bit smaller, right? There's more to it than that, but for just purposes, like, you know what a paragraph tag is, a video tag, an image tag, right? Pretty straightforward and declarative, right? Like, what I mean by declarative is like CSS, you get the selector, you know, if it's a class or if it's an ID, say what it is, and then you say color, red, background, blue, right? Like, declarative. When you make the jump from those things to JavaScript, it's different. JavaScript is imperative. So it works a different way. So like in JavaScript, you're trying to allocate memory in the computer to do something, right? It's not just show this on the screen. It's find this thing, put it in memory, and then I'm going to tell you what to do with it later on. So you needed to understand programming concept, is I guess what I'm saying. HTML, CSS, you don't need that. JavaScript, you do, right? You need to understand what a variable is, depending on the language you're in, what a type is. You're going to have to understand how to loop over things, right? And these things sound like they're, oh yeah, a loop. You just loop over a thing. But until you use it many times, it's not the clearest thing. It's not the easiest thing. And hey, maybe it's different for some people. Some people are just more inclined than I was at the time when I started. But so I think that's important to understand, is that they're completely different the way they work. So you have to change your brain structure. All right. So again, self-taught programmer. Then I went out to teach myself JavaScript. I got John Duckett's book. It's great. JavaScript and jQuery. So if that's how you learn best, definitely check it out. But here's the thing. You can read that book cover to cover 4 or 5 times. And I'm going to tell you this, you're not going to understand. You're not going to understand until you actually write code for yourself. So it's more like, think about coding like building a house maybe, okay? Let's think about it in that sense. So you go to build a house and sorry, there's a dog barking at me. I don't want to get attacked. I might edit this out later, who knows. Okay, he's friendly enough. He's just claiming his turf. It's a big dog. So anyways, where was I? Oh, so you want to build a house, right? And you can watch a tutorial on it, or you want to put in a patio. Anything like that. You watch a tutorial on YouTube, and then you go outside to do it, and you're like, oh boy, I made digging in the dirt and making something level seemed easy until I tried to do it, and now I can't. Coding is exactly the same way. So, as a self-taught developer, you're going to have to code a lot. And you're going to have to be very disciplined and carve out time to do it. So, I told you, I did that myself for about a year. And then about a year in, started getting frustrated because I started trying to move to the back end more. So I started HTML, CSS, JavaScript in the front end. Had pretty good understanding of what to do. Still wasn't writing good code, right? So like instead of grabbing something by a class and giving it a class and then grabbing all the things that I needed by a class and then looping over them, I was naming each individual thing, right? Each button I wanted to click on had an ID. How to get element by ID, right? And all that stuff. So code wasn't very good, but it was working. So I wanted to try to move to the back end. And this is right around when I started getting exposed to PHP and JavaScript on the back end. And there was just too much noise at the time because I was trying to find the right answer. And as I told you, I was running into things like Reddit and all those places that were telling you, hey, you gotta learn this language, learn C#, learn blah, 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 all this different stuff, right? PHP sucks because, C# is better, and they don't really explain to you why. So the thing of it was, I was confused. And so it was at this point in time that I signed up for a JavaScript boot camp. Because I was frustrated at my job. At this point, I had gotten frustrated at my job, and I had a new skill set. And I was like, well, maybe this would be something to explore. So I took the boot camp. It was a 9-month boot camp. Now, when we get to boot camps here, actually, before I get to the boot camp, let's wrap up the self-taught developer. So you can do it. It's going to be very, very hard. You're going to have to build a lot of projects. You're going to have to code a lot and be very disciplined, read a lot of books, and just trial and error on your own. So you can do it, but it's going to be harder, and it's going to be harder to get a job because you don't have a tangible thing that says, hey, I can do this. You just have a bunch of projects. So that's the self-talk. Now to the boot camp. So again, seeing this person's dad last night saying 6 weeks and you can make $100,000. Yeah, right. No, that's not gonna happen. 6 weeks is not enough time. So if you're sitting there and you're like, hey, I'm gonna get a job after a 12-week boot camp, maybe not. So the way my boot camp worked was it was broken into 3 sections. The first section was front end, HTML, CSS, and light JavaScript, which I whizzed past. It was really easy for me because it's all stuff I had been working with for a year. So it wasn't really groundbreaking or earth shattering or anything like that. But if you were one of the people that had never coded before, it would have been really hard to keep up and understand what's going on. You know, I remember at one point looking at my project because we shared our projects, my project compared to other people's projects, right? And it was like they had a white page with stuff that was all over the place and missized, and they would look at mine and be like, oh my God, it's so good. And I'd be like, I've been working with it longer, guys. That's all. You'll get there. You just got to keep working with it, you know? I actually ended up helping a lot of people in the boot camp, like kind of tutoring and mentoring them, because I knew what it was like to be them and needing somebody. And the boot camp that I signed up for, man, it really wasn't great for help in that regard. They had office hours twice a week, which they were the best part of the whole thing because you could sit there with an instructor and ask questions and all that stuff. But everything else was pretty much self-learning, right? It was video tutorials, and then they had like a coding program that you would run your code through and would check and, you know, make sure everything's right the way that it needs to be. But you know, it's mostly video tutorials, reading online resources, and that sort of thing. So the first part was HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. And the second part, so there was a break. It was right around Christmas time. There was a break. And when the second part started, it was React. And I remember being very excited for it because that was kind of what I wanted to do. That's really why I signed up for the boot camp, was to learn React. And I was signed up for the boot camp because I wanted a curriculum. But I'll get to that at the end. But so it was React. Now, keep in mind, we did HTML, CSS, and maybe we did a week or two of light JavaScript, right? Just scratching the surface of it. Then when we got to part 2, we jumped right into the React, like mapping over arrays, importing and exporting, like all this sort of stuff that I guarantee you nobody understood. You know, I mean, I understood it, but I also had a hard time with it. You know, we got through it and we learned it, and it was good to learn it and know it. But just getting React, you know, like going, you know, I think we were still using Create React app, which I don't think you do anymore. You know, and just understanding the file structure and then understanding how React actually works. Like it wasn't until after the boot camp that it actually clicked for me of how props worked, you know, like I know it sounds silly, but passing props, all React is a function and a function and a function and a function, right? So when you're passing a prop, basically you're just passing parameters and arguments around, you know, like that's all you're really doing, right? So you're passing those down to each other, and you have to do it that way because that's how you call functions, right? You have to pass the stuff into them. And so it wasn't until way after the boot camp that I understood that. And I was like, oh, like the light bulb came on. I'm like, that's what it is, right? And then when you're importing these things, you know, to other pieces of your puzzle, or not your puzzle, but your project, you know, and you're calling them in, like in those HTML elements, it's like, okay, now I get it, right? But I didn't get it when I was taking the course, and it really wasn't explained in that kind of like way. It was just, here's what you need to do to pass to the next module, right? So that was all the React stuff. And then on the end of it, the last 3 months was back-end development. And it was more like expose you to a bunch of stuff than it was really understand back-end development. You know, it was like, hey, this week we're using Strappy, and then next week we're gonna expose you to, you know, Next.js and Nuxt and all these different things, and you're just like, you can't even learn as it is. There's so much information, and then they're throwing more and more and more at you. But the thing is, for the boot camp, for someone who graduates from the boot camp, they can say, oh, well, we covered it. Here's all the things that we're going to offer in the boot camp, right? And you look and you see this list of all these things. You're like, oh, when you sign up for this boot camp, you think, look at all this stuff I'm going to know. Like, you have this inkling that you're going to be done, right? Like, you're going to be able to do that, and then that's it, right? I'm good. I'll get a job. And then they say, oh, we're going to help you get a job. At least I can't speak for other ones, but for the boot camp I had, helping get a job was terrible. I remember at one point they were posting like jobs for cashiers and stuff. Like, no, like, I get it. You could say, hey, I hope to find a job, but you know, it wasn't like programming stuff. The one thing I remember them doing was they had like, I want to say it was Capital One. It does a thing where they actually hire from boot camps, right? Give people a chance to be a junior developer. And so they had us all in this cohort jump into a meeting. You know, I remember taking the afternoon off of work, so I put in time off to do it. I went to this meeting, and first thing they said was, well, we only want to hire somebody who knows C# or Java. It's like, this is a JavaScript boot camp, and you told everybody to go to this thing, and they're not hiring any of us. What a waste of time. So I didn't think those services were very good. But hey, who knows? Maybe lightning strikes there. But you know, I have to be honest, that was a fail for me. But anyways, we got through the boot camp. I got my certificate. You know, and all this while I'm learning things on the side as well. So this is, you know, about, I was 6 months into the boot camp is when I had got hired for that VBA programming job I told you about. So about 6 months in, got that job. And so now, am I not only learning JavaScript, I'm learning Visual Basic for applications, learning accounting, because most of the software we built for the company was accounting. So like, I didn't accounting software, so I had to understand like principles of accounting, double entry accounting, all this different stuff, you know, like how interest rates and all that other stuff works, and you know, so that was another thing I had to learn. Then we had a couple things come in that was PHP based, which was my favorite part of that job because that was what I wanted to do, and that's how I kind of fell in love with PHP. But so I'm learning that. I'm learning JavaScript, front end, back end, React, VBA, PHP, SQL, all at the same time, right? It's a lot. That is a lot. But anyway, so this was, you know, about 9 months after I finished, or 9 months took for the boot camp. I had been at my VBA job for about 6 months, and then I was, you know, I was into the career. Now, here's the thing. People think, you know, at this point, they're like, oh, that was it, right? That was all you needed to do. No, I still, every day, have to learn new stuff, new libraries, different things. You know, like the other day at work, that wasn't the other day, but a couple weeks ago, you know, it was a PHP library where you could bring stuff into Word. I think it was called PHP Word, but it's an old version of it. There really wasn't much documentation on our end on how any of this stuff actually worked, because it's all in-house PHP. So like, had to learn it and had to read it and all that different stuff. So I guess what I'm saying is, you're sold that with these boot camps that you're gonna know everything, you're gonna be this expert, but you're not, right? You're gonna be exposed to a lot of things. But I think the most important thing for me was that it gave me a curriculum, right? So I wasn't just reaching for whatever I read. Oh, that's cool, let's use that. Oh, that's cool. And that's what I was doing when I was self-taught, right? I was just saying, oh, yeah, I can use that, learn it. But I only know that thing. I don't understand all the other pieces that hook into that, right? I don't know how to use that thing. And whereas with the boot camp, it was more exposure to, building up towards those things. And they might have built fast, but at least there was a logical way, and there was a curriculum to follow, a path, if you will, to put you on. And that, I think, was one of the hardest things, is trying to find your way, find the path that you need to learn. Because when you're self-taught, you end up with all these different opinions from people online, and they're not really your opinions, right? You don't have an opinion in it because you haven't tried it, right? Like, somebody could say, I don't know, peanut butter and jelly is the worst tasting thing in the world. And if you've never had peanut butter and jelly, you'd be like, oh yeah, I don't like peanut butter and jelly, right? And then one day you try it, you're like, oh, this kicks ass. I love peanut butter and jelly, right? So working with coding languages is kind of the same thing. You need to work with them and see what it is that you want to do, right? Like, you want to build desktop applications, right? And you're working in PHP, you're wasting your time. I mean, maybe not wasting your time, but your time is better spent on another language, right? Learn the concepts in another language, because at least you're in that language. Just that, you're getting used to it more, and, the APIs and the different things that you can call in those languages. So that's that, right? So again, what did we talk about with the ad, right? So I think that's the big part of it. The big thing that was like the frustrating stuff, right? Like, oh, in 6 weeks you're gonna get a job. Not like, you're not gonna know. Like, it's gonna take more time than that. Total bullshit. So if you want to become a programmer, you're signing up for a lifetime of learning. It's never gonna stop, right? Like, so you need to accept that now, right? I've accepted that. I'm never gonna be like this. Like, in my head, I thought someday, hey, I'm going to be this great coder, and I'm going to know everything and be like a guru. I mean, you can learn to know a lot, but you're not going to know it all. And even the stuff that you learn and you forget. I hate to say it. I mean, it'll come back. You'll work with somebody for a little bit. It'll come back to you and be like, oh, yeah, that's right. That's how this works. But you're going to forget it. Your brain can only hold so much. Now, the next thing that I had a problem with this ad is they were like, code for, oh, I hate working 35 hours a week, as opposed to 65 hours. Hey, listen, I did the 65 hours a week, and I do the 35 hours a week as a programmer. And here's the thing. I work more now as a programmer than I did when I was working in hospitality. But the difference is I work from home, where I'm by my family, and if I need to step away for a couple of minutes, I can, right? Because in addition to my 9 to 5, I have my own business on the side where I do it. So I am constantly coding. It's not like, oh, I punch in and punch out and I don't do anything extra, right? Every day. And even when I'm not doing stuff for my business and I'm not doing it for work, I'm doing a personal project, right? Always coding. Number one, I love it. It's fun. I enjoy what I'm doing. I like to challenge myself. I like to figure out puzzles. So if that's you, that's the right kind of career to be in. But to think, oh, such a cushy, easy job, it's not true. You got to work at it. You got to learn. You're going to be confused. You're going to get things wrong. You're going to do it again. And you're going to sometimes spend 2 hours looking at 1,000 lines of code to realize that you spelled the variable wrong, right? It's just how it is. That's the job. So, that being said, the last thing is I worked 35 hours a week and make $120,000 a year, all within 12 weeks. Come on. You really believe that bullshit? No way. As a programmer, you can make that much money, but it depends on a lot of things. It depends on where you live, right? If you live in LA, or you live in Boston, New York City, these big cities, you're gonna make more money, but the cost of living there is a lot higher. As opposed to if you live in, I don't know, Tennessee, like outside of, the smaller, the big cities, but, suburbs or a smaller town in America. You're just not going to make that. Now, you can make that as like high up, like, senior level developer, but that's going to be like 5 to 10 years of experience in the field, not to a junior. No way. Because here's the thing, when a junior developer comes onto a team, it slows the team down. Not knocking any junior developers. I was a junior at once. But the thing is, it's going to slow the team down. Because if someone starts working for us and they're like, all right, Eric, go and show them the ropes about everything. Well, now I'm stopping whatever it is I'm doing to help the junior find stuff, stuff that I already know automatically, but they don't. Help them find stuff, help them use things, help them, this in-house function has no documentation. It's never had documentation. Sorry, it's not my fault, but hey, this is how you use it. It's going to slow me down because I'm spending so much time with the junior. And that's fine, because by the time the junior's up and running, my job's going to get a lot easier, because things that are easy to do, hey, add a button here, or, give it to the junior developer. They'll be fine. They can do it. So I guess what I'm saying is, you're not making those big salaries. Bullshit. Okay? Not going to happen. You can make a good salary. And for me, finally, I had spent 17 years in hospitality, pretty high up, and it took me a couple years to get to even again with what I was making. It took me like a year to get to where I was, and now I've surpassed that, more than that, but it took a sacrifice. So again, I guess what I'm trying to say is, everything that you're spoon-fed, as in coding such a great career, it's not all true. I love it, and I wouldn't do anything else. But there are drawbacks to it. You work a lot. You stress when you release new things. You aren't the healthiest. That's why I'm walking right now, because I'm trying to, I was, once I switched to programming, I gained 35 pounds. Not good, for someone in their 30s. That's not the time you want to be gaining 35 pounds. You want to lose it. You want to lose weight, you want to keep it off. And so you make that switch where you're sitting all day from physical labor. Well, of course, that's a problem. That's not good. So you need to be mindful of those things in your life. You got to make sure that you take the time to exercise and take care of yourself. And like I said, you're going to stress about releases. You're going to have headaches because you can't figure something out. You're going to be frustrated. You're going to make something that inevitably is going to break something else. It's the way that it works. And it's not all glamorous like people make it out to be. It's very rewarding, and I love it, and I wouldn't do anything else. But, that's me. I enjoy it. I enjoy the challenge. I enjoy the every day there's something new to learn. And if I didn't, this would be a horrible career for me, right? If I wanted to be outside every day and working with physical labor with my hands, not a good career for me. If I get frustrated easily, and something doesn't work and I want to sling things and punch things, not a good career for you, because it's going to happen. You're going to deal with it all the time. So you need to have some sort of patience for it. But anyways, that's kind of my take. That's my 2 cents on it. Hopefully this is helpful, but ads like that, they really bother me, and they get on my nerves, because it's not true. What they're selling, and they're going to sell people this course that's not going to help them. It's only going to push them farther away from what they actually need to do, right? So just remember that, and remember, if you're all in, you heard this, and you're still like, yeah, this is what I want to do, keep going, man. You're gonna get there, and girls, men and ladies, keep going, because you're gonna get there, and you'll succeed. Many fail. Many go this route. They try to do this, and they're like, I couldn't figure it out. And they get frustrated, and they fail. And that's okay. More coding jobs for people who can make it through. But, if it is what you want to do, and you're passionate about it, and you're good with learning all the time, and you like puzzles, and you like to build things, great career, So anyways, that was my take on it. yeah, if you have any questions, leave it down in the comments. Subscribe to the channel. I also have a podcast. It's the PH Podcast. You can check that out on Apple Podcasts. Again, this is Eric Codes. Hope everyone's doing well. Talk to you soon.